The containment alarm wasn't the worst thing Sarah Jackson had heard today. That distinction belonged to Commander Kael'thas, screaming orders to incinerate 3 children. She adjusted her glasses and kept reading the photo album. "All right, little ones," Sarah said softly, her voice cutting through the shrieking klaxons like she was in a library during finals week instead of a transport ship about to become a funeral pyre. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Let's see who this is here. See the teeth on this one? That's a proud smile, I think. The 3 Vexthul cubs pressed closer, their scaled bodies trembling against her legs. One of them, Sarah had started thinking of her as the smallest, though she was still roughly the size of a mastiff with more teeth, made a low, anxious vocalization. "I know, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "I know." On the view screen, Commander Kael'thas's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned. So over 12 years serving on diplomatic vessels meant absolute fury. His forearms gestured frantically at his officers, and the bridge descended into organized chaos. "The human is what?" His voice crackled through the ship's intercom, pitched high enough to make the cubs whimper. "I gave explicit orders." "She's in Section 7, sir," someone reported, voice shaking. "She locked the doors. The cubs won't leave her." Sarah turned another page. This one showed what she was fairly certain was the cub's mother. Larger, scarred, and somehow radiating the kind of fierce protectiveness that transcended species. She had her neck curved around 2 younger cubs, and her eyes... God, her eyes held such intensity. "Look here," Sarah told the closest cub, pointing with one finger. "That's your mother, isn't it? That's her right there." The cub made a sound that Sarah's heart interpreted as a sob. The intercom erupted. "Admiral Xylar is demanding we destroy the ship if those creatures aren't contained in the next..." Sarah muted it. "People get very loud when they're scared," she said conversationally to the cubs. "They think being loud helps. It doesn't. It just means they're not thinking clearly." The bridge of the Meridian was in full emergency protocol. Admiral Xylar, calling in from the Galactic Council's command center 3 systems away, had already begun transmitting termination orders. A Vexthul mother, a creature that had allegedly destroyed 3 entire colonies in her rampage after territorial disputes, was approaching at attack velocity. And humanity's diplomatic liaison was sitting in the library section, hands full of some kind of... What was that? Some kind of data storage device covered in what looked like water damage? Commander Kael'thas tried the door override for the 8th time. It didn't work. Sarah had always been good with security systems. "Get her out of there," Kael'thas snarled. "Use force if necessary." "Sir, she's talking to them." The officer's voice carried something Kael'thas couldn't quite parse. Wonder. "The cubs are calm. They're not attacking. They're just listening." Kael'thas's 3 eyes fixed on the security feed. Sarah Jackson sat cross-legged on the library floor, surrounded by falling papers and floating debris from when the cubs had crashed through the cargo hold. One of them had its head against her shoulder. Another was pointing at the album with something that looked disturbingly like curiosity. The third, the largest, had actually put down what appeared to be an old serving tray it had been carrying and was focused entirely on Sarah's voice. "That makes no sense," Kael'thas said flatly. "No, sir," the officer agreed. "The Vexthul don't have familial bonds. It's impossible. They're apex predators. They don't..." Sir. The officer's voice had gone very quiet. According to Dr. Vexia's latest behavioral files, we don't actually know that. She's only had 2 Vexthul specimens to study, both in captivity, both aggressive. Kael'thas opened his mouth, closed it. On the security feed, Sarah turned another page. One of the cubs made a clicking sound, sharp, distressed. Sarah's hand came up immediately, not touching but present, offering something. Comfort, maybe. The cub leaned into the invisible space near her hand, and the sound faded to a low rumble. Status on the mother? Kael'thas asked. 17 minutes out. Still on attack trajectory. She's not responding to any hails. Sarah didn't look up from the album. Her lips were moving. She was talking. But the audio was too quiet to hear from the bridge. The cubs were listening with the intensity of creatures hearing the most important lecture of their lives. Get me, Dr. Vexia, Kael'thas said, and contact the Galactic Council. Tell them the situation is complicated. Complicated how, sir? Kael'thas watched Sarah point to another photo, this one showing what appeared to be 3 smaller cubs and a large Vexthul beside what looked like a nest structure. The largest cub made that same sound, the one Kael'thas's translator couldn't parse. It wasn't a battle cry. It wasn't a hunting call. It sounded, improbably, like grief. Tell them, Kael'thas said slowly, that we have a human down there doing something impossible, and I have no idea how to stop her. The bridge fell silent except for the steady pulse of the alarm Sarah had decided to ignore. Dr. Vexia arrived on the bridge, looking like someone who'd been pulled out of cryo-sleep mid-nightmare. Her scaled skin rippled with stress patterns, deep purples bleeding into agitated blues. She was one of the few Vexthul in the Galactic Council's employ, a behavioral specialist whose entire career had been built on the theory that her species was fundamentally incompatible with civilized society. Commander Kael'thas didn't wait for pleasantries. Tell me what you're seeing, he said, pointing at the security feed. Dr. Vexia's 3 eyes fixed on the screen. Sarah was still there, still impossibly alive, still talking. But now, she was doing something that made Dr. Vexia's entire body go rigid. She was speaking Vexthul. Not words, not approximations. Actual vocalizations, complex, layered, the kind that required a throat structure Dr. Vexia didn't think any non-Vexthul could physically produce. Yet there was Sarah, somehow channeling the harmonic frequencies, the subsonic rumbles, the sharp percussive clicks that made up the old language. The pre-conquest language, the language spoken only in family groups. That's impossible, Dr. Vexia whispered. She's been saying that a lot, Kael'thas said dryly. About 3 minutes ago, I sent a containment team with sedative protocols. Dr. Vexia, I need you to explain why they backed out of the room looking terrified. On the screen, one of the cubs made a sound, a distressed, high-pitched keen that seemed to bypass Dr. Vexia's professional composure and hit something deeper. Sarah's hand came up immediately, and she vocalized back, something that sounded like a question, wrapped in that impossible Vexthul harmony. The cub responded, and this time the emotion was unmistakable. Grief. She's asking them questions, Dr. Vexia said slowly. And they're answering. They're telling her. The specialist's voice cracked. They're telling her about their mother. What do you mean they're telling her? Kael'thas's mandibles clicked with agitation. I mean they're communicating. Complex information exchange. They're describing injuries, a separation event, fear of abandonment. Dr. Vexia's 3 eyes never left the screen. Commander, they're not hunting. They're not in predatory mode. They're what? They're talking about missing someone. They keep repeating a vocalization pattern that translates roughly to mother pack or maternal unit. And the human understands. She understands what they're saying. Kael'thas's forearms gestured in synchronized frustration. How is that possible? She's human. Humans don't have the physiological capacity. I don't know, Dr. Vexia said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know anything anymore. On the screen, Sarah was showing them another photo. This one featured what appeared to be a larger family group. 7 or 8 adult Vex Thule arranged in a configuration that suggested deliberate positioning, intentional arrangement, chosen placement. The cubs made a series of sounds that cascaded over each other, clicking, harmonizing, building into something that sounded like a chorus. Sarah's eyes went bright with tears, but she didn't look away. Instead, she vocalized back, slower, simpler, but carrying the same emotional weight. She's comforting them, Dr. Vexia said. Her own voice was shaking. I think she's saying, they're still part of your story. They're still part of your family. The intercom crackled urgently. Commander, the Vex Thule Mother's ETA just dropped to 12 minutes. She's increasing velocity. All weapons. Systems are hot. Admiral Xylar is demanding you evacuate the human immediately or authorize destruction of the ship. Kael'thas's expression hardened. Tell the Admiral, don't, Dr. Vexia interrupted. Her 3 eyes finally tore away from the screen. Commander, please, don't interrupt her. Not now. The mother is coming for these cubs, Doctor. She's destroyed 3 colonies. When she arrives, Dr. Vexia said quietly, she's going to find her children alive, unharmed, being comforted by a human who somehow speaks the language of family better than we ever could. On the screen, Sarah was turning the pages faster now, narrating each photo with a voice that somehow managed to be both sad and hopeful. The cubs were pressing closer, absorbing every word, every gesture, every impossible kindness from this alien being, who decided that containment protocols and security measures were less important than sitting on the floor with 3 orphaned children. The smallest cub vocalized something soft. Sarah responded without hesitation. I know. We're going to find her. She's coming. Your mother is coming home. In that moment, Commander Kael'thas understood something the Galactic Council had never considered. They might have gotten everything wrong about the Vex Thule. The smallest cub was crying, not the aggressive territorial vocalizations that every military database classified as pre-attack warning signals. Not the hunting calls that had been recorded during the Vex Thule incursions. This was something else entirely. A sound that bypassed Dr. Vexia's professional analysis and hit the part of her brain that still remembered being young, being scared, being alone. Sarah held the cub against her chest, like it weighed nothing, like the creature's scaled hide and sharp edges didn't matter. Her hand moved in steady circles across its back, and she kept talking in that impossible Vex Thule harmony, her voice layered with frequencies no human vocal cords should have been able to produce. Commander Kael'thas couldn't look away from the screen. Status. Admiral Xylar's voice crackled through the intercom, sharp with impatience and barely contained fury. I need authorization protocols in the next 8 minutes, or I'm sending a strike team. Stand down, Kael'thas said quietly. Repeat that order. Stand down, Admiral. Do not approach this vessel. There was a pause that stretched like breaking glass. Commander, those are apex predators. The human is either compromised or, Dr. Vexia interrupted, her voice cutting across the comm channel with the weight of professional authority. Everything we know about Vex-Thule behavioral patterns is categorically, fundamentally, completely wrong. The bridge went silent. Dr. Vexia stepped closer to the security feed, her three eyes burning with the intensity of someone watching their entire life's work collapse into dust. Look at the cub's physiological markers. Elevated cortisol, stress hormones, neural patterns consistent with acute grief response. And look at what they're doing. They're seeking comfort from a human. They're allowing physical contact. They're responding to vocal reassurance. They're apex predators, someone said weakly from the science station. No, Dr. Vexia said. They're children, and we've been classifying an entire species as irredeemably hostile based on the behavior of grief-stricken, traumatized individuals we kept in isolated captivity. On the screen, Sarah turned another page of the photo album. This one showed what appeared to be a nesting structure, intricate, deliberately constructed, with multiple chambers. Inside the largest chamber, a group of Vex-Thule sat arranged in a tight cluster, their bodies intertwined, their expressions content, peaceful. Tell me what I'm looking at, Kael'thas said. Sarah's voice was steady, warm with a kind of tenderness usually reserved for human children. That's a family gathering. See how they're positioned? That's deliberate. That's choice. Your mother arranged that gathering, little one. She brought everyone together because that's what family does. They gather. They stay close. The cub made a sound, not distressed this time. Questioning. Yes, Sarah said, as if answering a question only she could hear. She loved you. She loves you still. Dr. Vexia's mandibles trembled. Commander, this album is a genealogical record. Look at the dating. These photos span generations. There are family lineages documented here, territorial arrangements, social hierarchies based on relationship rather than dominance. This isn't just evidence of emotion, this is evidence of culture, of civilization. But the threat assessment, someone started. Wrong, Sarah said flatly, not looking up from the cubs. Completely, catastrophically wrong. You want to know what happened? The cub's mother got caught in an asteroid field, sustained injuries, made a decision that any being with a family would make. She sent her cubs to safety, told them to find the trade post, to find help, to survive. She turned another page with careful fingers. And they did. They found a transport, they boarded it, and they've been carrying this album the entire time because it's all they have of home. It's all they have of their mother, their siblings, their pack. And somewhere in your military databases, someone classified that as advanced scout behavior and infiltration protocol. Sarah's voice carried an edge now. Not anger, exactly, but something sharper. Disappointment, maybe. Frustration at the sheer magnitude of the misunderstanding. You people really thought every being in the galaxy operates on pure predatory instinct? Welcome to having emotions, everyone. Apparently, they're a universal feature. The largest cub vocalized something, long, harmonious, building in complexity. Sarah responded, and the interaction went back and forth, building like a conversation, like a question and answer, like something with actual meaning. They're asking where their mother is. Dr. Vexia translated, her voice hollow. They're asking if she's still looking for them. Sarah checked the chronometer on the wall. Tell them 6 minutes. Tell them their mother is coming, and she's going to find them, and they're all going to go home together. She looked directly at the security camera then, directly at Commander Kael'thas, directly at Dr. Vexia, directly at everyone watching this impossible scene unfold. Because that's what family does, Sarah said quietly. They come home, they find each other, and they stay together. On the view screen, The three cubs pressed closer, waiting for a reunion they'd been promised in the language of a heart that didn't care about species classification or threat assessment or any of the careful categories the galaxy had built to keep itself safe. They just wanted their mother. The Vex Thule mother didn't come through the airlock like an executioner. She came through it like a wound trying to close itself. Her right flank bore the scars of the asteroid field, long, deep gouges through her scale structure, still partially bandaged with what looked like field medical supplies. Her movement was careful, deliberate, favoring her left side. But her three eyes were sharp, scanning, hunting for something far more valuable than targets. She was hunting for her children. Sarah didn't move. She just stood there in the library section, the three cubs clustered around her legs, the damaged photo album held carefully in her hands. The smallest cub made a sound, not distressed anymore, but something brighter. Recognition. The mother's entire body went rigid. "There they are," Sarah said softly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent bridge through every speaker system on the Meridian. "There's your mama. And look, she's looking for you. She's been looking this whole time." The mother took a step forward, then another. Her movement was slow, controlled, the kind of careful deliberation that suggested she was aware of every weapon system trained on her position. Commander Kael Thas watched the biometric readout, pain levels spiking with each step, stress hormones through the roof. But underneath it all, something else. Something that the behavioral database had no category for. Desperate hope. "Your babies kept your memories safe," Sarah said, holding up the photo album. "The whole time you were separated, they held on to these. Every single image, every single moment, they wouldn't let it go." The mother stopped 5 meters away, her three eyes fixed on the album. Dr. Vexia's voice came through the comms, barely steady. "She's... Commander, her biometric readout is showing neural patterns consistent with acute emotional processing. I think she's..." "Crying," Sarah finished. "She's crying. That's what that is." The Vex Thule mother made a sound, layered, complex, building from a subsonic rumble into something that harmonized with frequencies only her species could produce. It was a sound that bypassed every classification system, every threat assessment, every database of predatory vocalizations the Galactic Council had ever compiled. It was a sound of recognition, of relief, of a mother finding what she thought was lost forever. The smallest cub bolted forward. Commander Kael Thas's hand moved toward the weapons console before Dr. Vexia grabbed his arm. "Don't," she said. "Please don't." The cub collided with its mother at a run, and the mother's massive scaled body curved around it with a gentleness that made something in Kael Thas's chest crack open. The other two cubs followed, and suddenly the Vex Thule mother was surrounded, her cubs climbing over her, vocalizing in that same language of family that Sarah had somehow learned to speak. Sarah watched with tears streaming down her face. "Family isn't species-specific," she said, and her voice carried the weight of someone stating a fundamental truth that the galaxy had somehow managed to forget. Love isn't restricted to civilized beings. These cubs held onto photographs of their mother because that's what family does. They remember each other. They hold on to the moments that matter. They refuse to let them disappear. On the bridge, silence stretched like a held breath. The mother looked up from her cubs, looked directly at Sarah. Her three eyes met Sarah's, two across the space between them, and something passed between them that didn't require translation, didn't require protocol, didn't require the Galactic Council to authorize or understand. Just recognition, being seen, being acknowledged as something more than a threat assessment. The mother vocalized something, A question, maybe. A statement. Sarah responded in that impossible Vex-Thule harmony, her human voice carrying frequencies it shouldn't have been able to produce. The exchange lasted only a few seconds, but Dr. Vexia's recording equipment captured every note. "What did she say?" Kaltas asked. Dr. Vexia's voice was trembling. She said, "You protected my children. You gave them back their mother. I will remember your kindness until my end, and my children will remember it until theirs. Your name will be sung in our family gatherings." Sarah stepped forward slowly, moving with deliberate care toward the Vex-Thule mother. Kael'thas's entire bridge held its breath. Every weapon system tracked her movement. Every protocol screamed about unauthorized approach to hostile entity. Sarah knelt down, holding out the photo album. "This belongs to your family," she said. "Take it home. Add to it. Keep making memories together. That's what family does." The mother's massive head lowered. For a moment, Sarah was utterly vulnerable. A human alone with an apex predator that could end her life in a single strike. Instead, the mother's scaled face pressed gently against Sarah's, and she vocalized something that sounded almost like a purr. When Sarah stood, she was smiling. "Safe passage," she said to Kael'thas, not asking. "You're going to give them safe passage to the nearest neutral station, and you're going to provide medical supplies for the mother's injuries. And then you're going to recommend to the Galactic Council that we reevaluate our entire classification system for incompatible species." Commander Kael'thas found himself nodding before he'd even consciously decided to comply. "And maybe," Sarah added, her voice carrying that characteristic sarcasm that made the entire bridge want to laugh and cry simultaneously, "next time you encounter an unfamiliar species, you start by asking if they have families. Revolutionary concept, I know." Dr. Vexia was already moving toward the docking protocols, her three eyes bright with purpose. "I'm personally overseeing the medical treatment," she said, "and I'm requesting a full research grant to study Vex-Thule social structures. Everything we know is wrong. We need to rewrite the entire behavioral profile." The Vex-Thule mother made one final vocalization, clear, purposeful, carrying through every speaker on the meridian. The three cubs responded in unison, and then the mother turned carefully, favoring her injured side, and began moving toward the airlock with her children close around her. Sarah watched them go, the album safely held in the mother's scaled claws. "You know," Kael'thas said quietly, "you just restarted an entire species' reputation in the galaxy." Sarah shrugged. "I just helped some kids find their mom. On a Tuesday, we call that babysitting." But her eyes were watching the airlock, making sure the mother made it through safely, making sure the family stayed together. Because that's what family does. The mother paused at the airlock threshold. Her massive frame filled the doorway, backlit by the docking bay lights beyond. The three cubs clustered around her legs, their movements synchronized now, trusting. She turned her three eyes back to Sarah one final time and vocalized something that Dr. Vexia didn't even need to translate. Gratitude, recognition, a promise. "Go take care of your mom, you three," Sarah called out, her voice bright despite the tears still marking her cheeks. "Make more memories. Fill that album up." The smallest cub made a sound. Soft, harmonious, carrying layers of affection that somehow bridged the gap between species. The mother responded with her own vocalization, and then they were gone, disappearing into the docking bay with the careful deliberation of a family that had learned the value of staying together. Sarah watched the airlock seal behind them. Commander Kyle Thas stood beside her, his forearms hanging loosely at his sides. He looked like someone who just watched everything he believed about the universe get reprogrammed. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now?" Sarah smiled. "Now we all go back to work and pretend this wasn't the weirdest Tuesday of our lives." The Galactic Council's emergency session convened 48 hours later in the central hub of Sanctuary Station, and every representative species showed up. The data was irrefutable. Photographs spanning generations, deliberate social structures, evidence of mourning rituals, family bonding, territorial cooperation based on relationship rather than dominance. The Vex Thule weren't apex predators running on pure instinct. They were a civilization. They were a society. They were people. How many wars were unnecessary? Someone asked into the silence. No one answered, because no one knew. The mathematics of that question were too large, too terrible. Dr. Vexia stood before the council with the photo album open on the central display. "We based 300 years of hostile policy on flawed data gathered from traumatized, imprisoned specimens," she said flatly. "We were studying grief and calling it aggression. We were observing desperation and calling it predatory behavior. Every Vex Thule encounter we classified as hostile was likely a mother searching for her children, a family trying to survive." The council chamber erupted in cross-species shouting. The new protocol emerged from the chaos like consensus forged in fire. Before any species encounter, before any threat assessment, establish the foundational question: do they have families? Do they love? Do they grieve? It was simple. It was revolutionary. It came from a librarian with a damaged photo album and an instinct that said children needed comfort more than they needed containment. Sarah returned to the library section of the Meridian with the kind of purpose usually reserved for civilians who just watched their entire professional identity get rewritten by a minor custody situation. Her co-worker, Marcus, was reorganizing the data storage systems when she walked in, carrying the album's damaged case. "You know," Marcus said without looking up, "you almost started an interspecies diplomatic incident." Sarah laughed, actual, genuine laughter that made her whole body shake. "Please, I just helped 3 lost kids find their mom. On a Tuesday, we call that babysitting back home. You just rewrote the Galactic Council's entire threat assessment protocol." "Cool. Now, can you help me catalog this? The filing system is going to have a field day with cross-species family documentation." She was back to normal within an hour. Coffee in one hand, scanning device in the other, moving through the library with a kind of competent efficiency that suggested the last 72 hours had been just another shift. Except the photograph album got its own display case. Historical artifact status. Future generations would study it. Sarah treated it like she'd handled it with every single shift. With care, with respect, with the understanding that memories mattered. The message came through the official Vex Thule cultural channels 72 hours later. The mother had compiled her own documentation, photographs taken before the separation, recordings of the journey, materials showing her cubs' resilience during their time alone. She'd titled it, "The Human Who Understood Pack." Scholars across 3 star systems began analyzing it immediately. Philosophers argued about what it meant. Cultural experts declared it the most significant work in contemporary Vex Thule society. Universities offered courses on its implications. Sarah was completely oblivious, making coffee for the morning shift. The official order came through channels that usually took weeks to process. It arrived as a standing directive within 48 hours. When human personnel encountered incompatible species situations, they were to be included in the initial contact protocols. Humanity's greatest diplomatic strength wasn't military might or technological advancement. It was emotional intelligence. It was the ability to sit on a library floor with 3 orphaned aliens and understand that family was universal. That grief transcended species. That photos and memories and simple kindness could rewrite cosmic law. Sarah's job description updated with a line that made her snort coffee. Primary consultant for cross-species family integration and reconciliation protocols. Great, she said to no one in particular. Now I'm part of the solution to everything. 3 weeks later, a transport docked with a new delivery. 7 orphaned cubs of a completely different species. Their scales colored like stained glass, their vocalizations haunting and beautiful. They were terrified. Sarah was already in the library section when they arrived, surveying the shelves with the expression of someone preparing for inevitability. She had the tea brewing before anyone asked. "Let me guess," she said, looking at the confused medical officer escorting the cubs. "You 3 are also looking for family?" One of the cubs made a sound, tentative, questioning. Sarah smiled. "Yeah," she said. "I know the feeling. Come on, let me show you how we fix that." And in that moment, with 3 new orphaned children finding their way to a human librarian with infinite patience and a gift for understanding the universal language of loss, the galaxy learned something fundamental about its own nature. Family wasn't species-specific. Love wasn't restricted to the civilized. And sometimes, the most explosive diplomatic breakthrough came from a person who simply understood that children, any children, deserved to go home.